Welcome back. In this session, we will start building our own classes. In particular, we want to store the information obtained from new players in a player and family class. To be precise, we create instances of that class to store this information. Let's run our graphical user interface. We built a way to input the data. So for instance, we can start a new game where we select a player and press the start button. Now this does not create any instance. So Amy Smith at the moment lives in our world without having a proper container to store this information. So what we do first is we now try to create a player class and a family class to store the information. It would be sensible that the first name is stored on the player class, whereas the last name, the family name, is stored on the family class, and the gender should be again focused on the player. So what I do is I create some new files where I create these classes. I use the docstring just to add a few comments. To start the class, we use the class keyword followed by the name of the class. It's a convention to use a capital letter, so I just call this player open closed brackets. And then I can start thinking about attributes. Now attributes are, if you like, ways to store information. So for us, the obvious thing to store is the first name and the gender on our player instance. So now we use one of Python's so-called magic functions or dunder functions. So these are doubles underscore functions. So you see double underscore init followed by double underscore. And then in the brackets we have self, which refers to the instance, and then whatever we want to assign. So these are the arguments, positional arguments. If you want to know more about object-oriented programming, I have done another video. So in here we assign our name to the attribute name, which is stored on the instance. I refer to self, use the dot operator, and then I refer to the attribute, which is name, and then I assign it based on the argument. I do the same with gender. In the case of the family class, I proceed in a similar way. The difference is I focus here on the last name. I just also call it name. So for the family, it's family.name is equal to name, and again I have my dunder init method and I have a family class. Now in order to store the information, what we do is we take our class and we initialize it. So we create an instance and then we assign the inputs provided by the player. So let's go back to our start button. So first I create global variables because I will need to use the player and the family outside the scope, so outside the start button function, because remember the function is only triggered when I click the start button and then it would cease. But we want to work, of course, on the player and on the family throughout the game. So this is why I state that these are now global variables. And then I initialize them. Again, go back to my video on object-oriented programming where I talk about this process in a lot more detail. So here I refer to the player class and then I assign the name based on the name provided. So this is the first name and the gender. And I do the same with the family. And then in my check, which I think is useful, which is printed to the terminal, I refer to player.name. So I use here the dot operator and I obtain the attribute, and it should hopefully work. And I do the same with my family instance. And again, have in mind in terms of scope, this should work outside the function. At the top of my script, I now make the import statements. I like to make it very explicit. So I write here from player. So this is from the script, I import player. So I know exactly where things are coming from. Of course, I already named the script in the right way just to keep it easy. And I do the same with family. So from family, I import family, but sometimes I might store several classes in one. I personally don't do this. I like separation. So that should do it. So now Python knows that player refers to my own player class and family as well to my own family class. Let's see how that works. Okay, so that is an unindent does not match any other indentation level. Now this happens because of using Sublime Text. Now this is sometimes happening, in particular if you are lazy and you copy paste from other scripts, which I do because I don't like typing it all up while you watch. And you see that here, so when you mark this, you see that sometimes you have 4 dots and sometimes it's just kind of looks like a straight line. So we address this, we do a shift and then tap and move it back again. So that should usually settle it, and we save it and run this one more time. Now it runs. So this is just a Sublime Text issue. Let's do a new one, and again let's try with Amy Smith, and now we should hopefully see that changing. Amy belongs to the family Smith, so now it seems to work just fine. Good, so this is important to actually prepare us to save and load, because that only works with objects, and so we now need our instances, our global instances created, which we have. Now we have a player, we have a family, and we can start loading and saving in the next session. Before I finish, it would be nice to get this special icon here also on our main window, and this is of course easily done. So that should be just a simple copy paste job. So that's here our icon, which I now actually also want to have here on my main root. So I copy paste that, I do a shift tab, and of course I have to change that here to root, and that should do it. Let's test that. Yes, here we are. So now we are in a good shape, and I see you in the next session.